As you've been hearing, we have this breaking news that Colin Powell has passed away at the age of 84. His family says it was complications from COVID, though he was fully vaccinated. Of course, he was the first Black Secretary of State, as well as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'd like to bring back in Dr. Patel now to actually discuss this breaking news here with me. So, Dr. Patel, I think hopefully you can hear me right now. Yeah, there you are. Hi, Dr. Patel. So, yeah. I mean, we're hearing that he was fully vaccinated, 84 years old, though, and did have some of these underlying health conditions. What do you make of this news? And just what do you think about someone passing after being fully vaccinated, keeping in context his age and his other health conditions?
Yeah, Savannah, we're waiting to get, obviously, more details, but a devastating loss nonetheless. Listen, 84 years old, as you mentioned, with some chronic conditions, multiple myeloma, which can cause kind of, Savannah, a condition in the blood that causes the blood to be a little thicker and more prone to things like blood clots. And so there's so many things that can happen just with COVID-19 infection. And I think, as you point out, someone who's fully vaccinated, which raises alarm bells in all of us, I'm sure, but someone who's fully vaccinated but has these underlying chronic conditions really puts him in that category of incredibly high risk. And I would even go further to say immunocompromised. Savannah, it's why we're having this conversation about booster shots, and we'll know more details, I'm sure, shortly. But it could be anything from complications related to, a combination of COVID-19 plus the underlying conditions. Hard to know at this point in time. It's rare, though. I will say this. It's so devastating to see someone that I think is a global public figure like this. It's going to raise a lot of questions and awareness. But my first point would be he does have a lot of those criteria for someone incredibly vulnerable, even in a breakthrough infection, which is potentially what could have happened, to have these complications resulting in rare, but resulting in death.
Even in his death, they're still trying to sell this thing. This is Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 10, and it reads, "To whom shall I speak and give warning that they may hear? Behold, their ear is uncircumcised, and they cannot hearken. Behold, the word of the Lord is unto them, a reproach. They have no delight in it." Kal halal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Salutations to you, hopeful elect. Shalom, Yasharallah. By now you've already heard it yourself. It's been all over the mainstream media. If you just so happen to tune out during the opening clip, once again, the first so-called Afro-American Secretary of State, Joint Chief of Staff, and 4-star General Colin Powell died yesterday at the, I believe it was yesterday, at the tender age of 84 due to, today we'll call it due to the Cerveza 19 complications. Remember the algorithms. Although he was vaccinated 2 times, he was suffering from multiple myeloma, a cancer of the cells responsible for producing the cells that produce antibodies, which is what the mainstream media is reporting compromised his immune system. Let me read that verse in Jeremiah again. Jeremiah 6 and 10. "To whom I shall speak and give warning, that they may hear. Behold, their ear is uncircumcised, and they cannot hearken. Behold, a word of the Lord, whose real name is Yahweh, is unto them a reproach. They have no delight in it." At this point, if you can't see the writing on the wall, all the signs are there. Let me say it like this. If you can't wait to take the vacation, 2 C's, remember the algorithm, then you are definitely of the lot who suffer from an uncircumcised ear. You will not hearken, and never will you heed this word going out. And that's all I'm going to, or I even really need to say about that. In any event, as much as we Israelites would like to claim Mr. Powell, some more than others, of course, being we suppose he was from the tribe of Benjamin, Wikipedia says his parents were of Scottish and African descent, and we know that when they say African, it sometimes is synonymous with being an Israelite. Whatever the case, a Benjamite of Scottish and African parentage, his parents emigrating from Jamaica to New York City. I believe he was born in Harlem and actually raised in the South Bronx. Whatever the weather, as much as we may claim Colin Powell to be a fellow Israelite. He definitely served as an asset in Esau's war against we Israelites. Because of his ethnic background, he would use his likeness to appease Jake whenever we so-called blacks were displeased with being treated as less than. He was one of the many we shall overcome cards, which didn't really resonate with so-called Afro-Americans because the consensus was we were sure if he was here fighting for us. He was vocal on some, but silent on a lot of. He was silent on a lot of issues. Despite that, Colin Powell was still a tool used in many ways to forward the elitist agenda. As decorated and celebrated as he was being in this truth, you realize all his praises in the world really add up to a no, never mind, because he was a man of this world and not a man working towards the kingdom to come. James 4:4 says this, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of the heavenly Father. Hence the public outpouring of he'll be greatly missed by you 2/3 and the powers that shouldn't be to go along with all the reciting of his credentials and heavy accolades. Sirach, which is Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, 13 verse 15 says this, every beast loveth his like, and every man loveth his neighbor. Did y'all live next door to Colin Powell? Because I sure didn't. All flesh consorteth according to kind, and a man will cleave to his like. What fellowship hath the wolf with the lamb? So the sinner with the godly. Birds of a feather flock together. Sorry to burst your bubble, Israel, but Colin Powell was very much a company man and a part of this beast system. Roughly paraphrasing Amos 3:3, I believe. Can two walk unless they be in agreement? Never forget it was Colin Powell who spearheaded the name change of Operation Blue Spoon. Here, let me look back to my notes. Operation Blue Spoon to Operation Just Cause, because he had anticipated its backlash. So he theorized, and this is a direct quote, even our severest critics would have to utter just cause while denouncing us. Now, you got to think to yourself, denounce the U.S. government and its military for what? I mean, those of you not seated at the dinner table, Operation Just Cause, where the United States went into Panama to depose alleged drug trafficker, as well as CIA asset General Manuel Noriega, was about placing their own puppet leadership into power, which some may cry foul, but what about the military wanting to try out their new high-tech weaponry on unsuspecting ethnic Panamanians? Imagine the faces of the Panamanian military when their fellow soldiers were being melted before their very eyes, because this was the first time the U.S. would be testing out their newly acquired laser technology. And that reminds me of Zechariah 14:12, one of my favorite verses. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord Yahweh will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. Jerusalem is we so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, we Hebrew Israelites, starting with the elect. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. This is one of the plethora of reasons why Yahweh will return using a thermonuclear plague, i.e. the ICBM missiles, the heat from the radiation and lasers from the chariots, to recompense Esau for his treatment of the sons of Israel and the wickedness he spread throughout the planet Earth. Whether he knew it or not, Mr. Powell was doing that to his own people. Always remember, American military tradition often speaks of the Buffalo Soldiers, Israelites employed by the U.S. Army to run down, kill, and capture their own brother Gad, a so-called Native Indian. And then there's his presentation to the UN Security Council. laying out U.S. evidence, mind you, of Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. They never did find those WMDs, did they? Now, you and I know come hell or high water, Baby Bush was going to go into Iraq anyways. But as I said, Colin Powell was the tool used to sell the idea to the UN, which for the record is a role he says he deeply regrets in playing. You know, 1 million not so innocent Iraqis, including women and children, were killed in that military action. And I say not so because, like Colin Powell, Job 4 and 7, let's get it. And it reads, "Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off?" The scriptures say none die innocent, which, you know, of course speaks to Colin Powell and all of us, but it should be a reminder to we Israelites, especially considering the times ahead. What we're about to experience in Jacob's trouble is a fatherly chastisement. We are, in sake of it, we are supposed to, remain faithful, even unto death, because ultimately Yasharallah can never end. Esau and the other nations, keep in mind, will have to suffer the same adversities, if not worse, for their own wickedness. In any event, when I think about the life and times of, let's call it the life and times of Colin Powell, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on the Freudian slip that echoed throughout the world. Maybe that's a little too much sauce, but in any event, it was one of the first times I can remember getting any type of real confirmation, if you will, into just how deceptive the American government was and is, and how far of a reach they had in terms of monitoring its own citizens. Now, I would love to, Salakia, just a little distracted here I'm still watching the news. But in any event, I would love to play you the video for those of you who know what I'm talking about. You know, the powers that shouldn't be have done their best to scrub any idea of it ever existing from the internet. Almost. If you go to the U.S. Department of State Archives, you'll find a transcript of the June 17, 2001 Fox News interview where Secretary of State Colin Powell tells the world concerning nuclear materials that have left Russia and are unaccounted for. According to the transcripts here now, this is a direct quote, or so I thought. "No, we don't exactly have a social security system that captures every Russian scientist, but this is something that is of a concern to us. It should be of concern to Russia as well." Now, I say so I thought because, correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't the actual quote that opened all our eyes to your social security number being used as a tool to track Americans. I found the actual quote somewhere else, and it's no wonder J.D. Rockefeller curses the day the internet was ever created. What Mr. Powell actually said was, and here's the quote: "Finding the Russian scientists may be a problem, being that Russia does not have a social security system, as here in America, that allows us to monitor, track down, and capture an American citizen." That sounds more like it. What I can remember about that video is Colin Powell sitting there, stuck on stupid for at least a minute when he realized he had let the cat out of the bag. Psalm 64 and 8, "So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away." And that's straight to the point. Anywho, 84 years old by today's standards, that's a good full life. You know, it's ironic. You live by the sword. The baby sword might have been that sword that took you out. Let's close with this. This is Jude 1 and 11. "Woe unto them," woe meaning destruction, "for they have gone in the way of Cain." And in which way did Cain go? He murdered his brother Abel, who had the spirit, be it out of envy, his own greed, insolence, and straight up disobedience. He rejected Yahweh's laws, and because of that, Yahweh rejected him. Esau is the reincarnation of Cain in the spirit, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward. And what was the error of Balaam? To forsake the right way of Yahweh, the way of this truth, the correct way of our power, for filthy lucre's sake, you two-thirds who would rather revel in your unrighteousness for credentials, worldly praise, and what amounts to meaningless accolades, and perished in the gainsaying meaning to dispute, i.e. in their contradiction, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. Speaking of Moses' kinsman Korah, who rebelled against Moses, really the Lord Yahweh, drawing others from the congregation, conspiring with them who thought themselves to be more deserving of the priesthood and birthright. Any of that sound familiar? These are the spots in your feasts of charity when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, and we know water represents knowledge and is truth. Carried about of winds, trees whose fruit withereth without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame. Wandering stars, and that's self-explanatory, you Israelites like Colin Powell, who will wake to everlasting shame in the kingdom, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever, symbolizing you Israelites who will remain in the congregation of the dead, meaning not knowing or understanding this truth. The confirmation of that is 2 Peter 2 and 15 and on down, I believe, until you are brought back through birth by the Israel of the Most High into the kingdom. If Colin Powell was an Israelite, he definitely knows it now. Call halal Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash, through the power and spirit. I hope you edified. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who teaches 100% truth and rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Remember, no test, no jabbity jab, and damn sure, don't take that chip. Shalom Yasharala. Kwam Yasharala Wa'ababa Ball.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Maybe under here.